Oh, we can do this. Hello, everybody. It's so good to see you. Hi, Leslyn. How are you?
Hi, nice to see you, Gail.
It's good to see you. I know we see each other a lot, but then we also don't at the same
Well, we just
time.
like hanging out.
I know, right? So, welcome to Lipedema Wellness Conversations with Gail. That would be me. And my friend. And our friend today is Dr. Leslyn Keith. And I'm so excited that she's here. We have been talking about behind the scenes, before we started, we've been talking about the topic that we're going to talk about today. I got really excited. So if you are out there, just let us know that you are. I see Mary is here from Milwaukee. It's damp and chilly. We always talk about the weather for some reason. And it looks like Zelda's here from wet and chilly Nova Scotia. So if you're here, go ahead and throw in even if it's just your first name or where you're from. Sometimes your name doesn't show up. We like to see you here. Jean Lewis from Northern California. This is a different Jeannie Lewis. We've got two Jeannie Lewises. That's awesome. One is from Colorado and one is from Northern California. So it's good. Kathy's here from Union, New Jersey. Peggy Woodson's here, and she's going to be our guest next week. Hi, Peggy. She's from Louisiana. And then it looks like Patricia Parrott is here. Paige is here from Tennessee. It looks like we're all over the place. And I hope that if you guys feel that you just love us and you can't stand it any longer, you have to kind of smash the heart button, or you gotta give us a thumbs up. I would love to see that, because we need to know how much you love us. So anyway, okay. Hello, Cheryl's here and Lisa's here. So it's really good to see all of you guys here today. So I want to give a brief introduction to Leslyn, and I'm going to let her finish off the introduction. Leslyn is the director of research at Lipedema Project and the president of the board of Lipedema Project. She has been working with Lipedema Project and Lipedema Simplified for 5 years.
I think Catherine and I started working together around 2016 or so.
Oh, yeah. So that's more than the years I can count on one hand. So it's over my pay grade. And Leslyn is one of the most amazing people that I meet, because she really loves research. She digs around in research papers. She is able to get in there and figure out what they're talking about. With me, I kind of glaze over when I read research papers. But when I talk to Leslyn about the research that she's looking at, I don't glaze over. So this is really So hi, Leslyn. I'm so glad you're here with us today.
Thanks for having me. And I think also a pertinent thing about my background is that I'm a certified lymphedema therapist, and I teach other healthcare providers how to treat lymphedema and lipedema. And so it's one of the big reasons why I want to see what is the newest information. How can this impact how we can better help people who have lymphedema and or lipedema. So, and I think the topic we have today is, I think, something that's been on everybody's mind. People have talked about it quite a bit. There's still just lots of speculation about it. I'm not super versed on it, but we have opinions anyhow. So, so we want to talk about today because you guys are interested.
Right. And one of the things that we do at Lipedema Simplified is we listen to the community, and we realize that there's been a lot of questions from younger people. Many of us have made it through puberty. We've made it through pregnancies. We've made it through hysterectomies. We've made it through perimenopause. We've made it through menopause, right? A lot of our community has, but a lot of our community are going through that right now. They're going through pregnancies or after pregnancies and breastfeeding, or they're looking at possibly getting hormone therapy. They're starting perimenopause. And so those of us who are more seasoned, I don't know how else to say it. We're well seasoned, and we're looking back at our life and we're going, oh, that's what was happening then. Oh, that's why that happened to my body at that time. Because we know that lipedema is connected to us hormonally somehow, whether it's a hormonal surge or an unsurge, like a detraction, some type of rupture in our hormonal balance seems to be really linked to lipedema and lipedema flares and things like that. And so today, Leslyn and I were thinking about what topics we could talk about today. And Leslyn came up with the topic about lipedema and pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And so what have you discovered about that?
Well, let me tell you first why I picked this topic, because two things put it into my head. One is that you said that the topic of hormones and stuff like that came up at the last Tribe Q&A. And the other thing is that I was just talking to a woman today who has lipedema and lymphedema, and I think she's in her 70s now. And she said, when I felt the best was when I was pregnant. That is so interesting. Not the before and not the after, right, but during the pregnancy. That is fascinating to me. And then I remembered an article that I had read, and I actually talked about it on one of my Research Update Facebook Lives. And it's called, Does Lipedema Mimic Pregnancy? Oh, how interesting. So I realized that there is a lot of speculation in some of these papers. And this author, Samantha Colony, from Harvard Medical School, she has some speculation. There's some ideas that she thinks should be followed up on research. And then there was another paper just talking about the hormones. And as you were saying, Gail, how could they be are they driving lipedema, the symptoms of lipedema? And so wanted to talk with those things with an expert as yourself, that has lived not only the condition of lipedema, but also has been pregnant. So you are the expert, and I'm the one who reads articles.
Oh, so I was the guinea pig for the universe, the rest of us, right?
But so, I know that we have lots of experts that are joining us here today, and please join in the conversation, comments or questions or anything. Kathy says that too. I did too. Felt the best during pregnancy. Right. That is so interesting. So there's definitely something going on there, but I think there's stuff that we need to talk about because, well, it seems to be a trigger time that after the pregnancy that the lipedema symptoms can get worse. They can accelerate. It's a exacerbation time. So, and then maybe you're doing some things to manage your lipedema. And is this okay to be doing while breastfeeding, for instance? So I think there's a lot to talk about on this topic that people will be interested in.
Well, and one of the things that happened with me with pregnancy is I got varicose veins.
Oh, yes.
And the doctors were telling, I don't know if it was really varicose veins, but that was so I was pregnant in the 80s. And that was the term that we were using at the time. Oh, look, you've got spider veins coming. And it's because of the excess weight that you're carrying. And they would always tell me that. Well, as I finished up being pregnant and I wasn't carrying as much excess weight, right? Mm-hmm. Then I'm like, well, how do I get rid of these? Oh, well, you need to wear support. When you're pregnant, you've got swelling in your ankles. When you're pregnant, you need, and I'm like, I just thought that was normal. to put on all this weight. I gained 110 pounds of my first baby, and I couldn't stop it. I ended up preeclampsia, right?
Oh,
Everything, and so all these things. As I look back, I'm thinking, oh, there might have been venous insufficiency
right,
already.
right.
Might have been some uh, connective tissue disorder already. And if I already, and I was already, had already exhibited signs of what we now know as lipedema, I wonder how that was all connected.
Yeah, yeah. And interestingly, with you, Gail, with having the preeclampsia, didn't necessarily feel so good during the pregnancy.
Not my first one, but my other two, piece of cake.
Okay.
The first one was rough because of the
Yeah,
preeclampsia.
yeah, yeah. And so I'm not exactly sure what makes it so good, but I'm going to bring in another thing, another piece that I think is so interesting. I think many of you may have heard of the HCG diet, the human gonadotropic. It's a hormone that we have when we're pregnant. And so what they can do with people is they inject this hormone into them, and it makes, for women, it makes them think that their body is pregnant. And during that latter half of pregnancy, your body automatically, it starts harvesting or burning any stored fat that you had to support the fetus. And so the first part of the pregnancy is fat storing, but the second part is fat burning. And so get an injection of this hormone that makes your body think you're pregnant. Oh, and I should start burning fat because I should feed the fetus. And so, interestingly, Dr. Paula Stewart, who is a lymphologist, she's a physician who works with people with lymphedema and lipedema, she did a little kind of a pilot study at her clinic, and she found that the women who had lipedema, had genuine lipedema, when she did this injection, they felt fantastic. And so you go on a diet along with this injection, and you only eat 500 calories a day. You're talking starvation diet, 500 calories a day, low calorie, low fat diet. And the woman with lipedema, that was plenty of food because they were using their body's stored fat. They had all the energy in the world. They did great. The people who we thought they had lipedema, but maybe they really didn't, they were miserable, starving, felt so hungry on only the 500 calories a day. And so there is something with lipedema and pregnancy that at least the during of that it's everything seems to line up and do well. It's almost like the woman with modern day lipedema, as we've talked about before, the mother of our species, because prehistorically that woman with lipedema was particularly suited to being pregnant and producing, offspring. And now, well, we've got all these other comorbidities that go with it, that horrendous pain and bruising and all that kind of stuff that they probably didn't have prehistorically. They still feel a lot of times fabulous during pregnancy, but it is a very arduous condition otherwise. But there's something that those hormones all seem to line up and go, oh, this is what I was meant to do. If I could just be in this place all the time.
Well, and when you talk about the mother of the species theory, I guess, because that's pretty much what it is a theory. Yeah. And then you just said, well, okay, and they could survive on 500 calories a day. And if I had lipedema and I was carrying a baby and I was going through famine, I'd be okay.
Yes.
Because my baby, because I can feed my baby.
The other women who didn't have that type of body died. They did not survive to give birth. They couldn't do it. But all the pieces line up for a woman with lipedema prehistorically she was fine. Oh, no food. I'm good. The baby's good, you know?
Yeah.
And they would survive, and their offspring would survive. They would still be able to produce milk and, nurse the young, and hopefully some food would be starting to come in sometime in there. But they could survive during those times of famine. Yeah.
Isn't that's wild? And I'm thinking about some of our community members. We have breastfeeders in our community, people who are in the process of nourishing their babies, and they've been questioning if they have to eat different, or can they continue with keto or with carnivore as they breastfeed.
Mm-hmm.
And and I do know there are people out there who have continued. When they got pregnant, they didn't go back to the standard American diet. They continued on how they were eating, whether it was paleo or keto. I say keto this way because whole foods, healthy keto.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry about my voice. Excuse me. Or carnivore, and they've continued, and they were able to continue breastfeeding their babies. They didn't have to raise their carbohydrates to the point where they hurt their
Right.
bodies.
Right.
So we went back to more of the natural way of eating, and they continued through, and they were able to breastfeed their babies for a year and a half, 2 years.
I think two very public people who did that was Dr. Ken Berry's wife,
Nisha,
and they're both carnivore, and she got pregnant and continued carnivore through the whole pregnancy, and of course afterwards also. And then also Dr. Robert Saivez's wife, and now I'm forgetting her name. I mean, these are both wonderful women, and I'm sorry, but they also were both carnivore, and he's given presentations. I gave a presentation at I think our October Heart to Heart event, and he showed his baby, and it was this, I mean, it's an infant, but his son is like this muscular little dynamo as an infant. He said, this is how babies should look. I mean, it is well-nourished and sturdy little kid. So, but, we cannot tell people how they should eat in general, but specifically, during your pregnancy and how you should feed your child, you really got to talk with your healthcare provider and see what's going to be good for you.
Yeah. And the other thing about it is we do know, though, that there is a particular way of eating that does help eliminate pain and swelling with lipedema. And for some reason, it's not the standard American diet.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we also know that the lymphatic system, the lymph system, prefers one way. It prefers as healthy a food as we can get.
Yeah.
You gave a great presentation. Was that just yesterday? At our CSIG, and you showed why the lymph system it's not just there. It's not just a toxic dumping ground. It's not a sewer, necessarily just a sewer system, but it's a super highway, and it fuels it's amazing. So anyway, that's another topic completely. So, the other question that comes up often, there's two, but another one comes up about female hormones, our reproductive hormones, estrogen and progesterone and stuff. And should I be taking, what do you call it?
Well, you can do birth control,
Uh-huh.
which is going to be with hormones. And if you're at menopause and maybe you want to take care of menopausal symptoms, should you do hormone replacement therapy?
Right. Yeah.
Is that what you were thinking of?
That's what I was trying to think. I was trying to come up with HRT, and I could hear a whistle in your background, like a siren was going off. And I was like, oh, Bill's got a good whistle going.
I'm sorry you can hear that. I get
No,
those
it's
sirens
okay.
all the time.
So yeah, HRT. And
Yes.
a lot of women ask that question, if they should be taking hormone replacement.
Yeah. And that's another paper. I didn't put it in the link in there, but a group out of, I think they were from Vanderbilt and some other places in the US. They were, again, it's a theory. There hasn't been a lot of actual clinical research to really test this, but they were looking at could hormone replacement or giving a woman with lipedema hormones, sex hormones, is that going to help with her symptoms? And they do believe it can. But there's other articles that said, well, it seems like depending on the conditions, the environment that the estrogen is present, it could be either inflammatory or it could be non-inflammatory. And if you have an inflammatory condition like lipedema, you may not want to make that worse. But like I say, there's speculation by some that by taking the female sex hormones, the estrogens particularly, that we might actually, and it seems like for some women, it helps with the symptoms.
Right. So I know we get that question a lot, especially on Facebook. And when people start answering, the answers are all over the place.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's also personal.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like, do you take the chance?
Mm-hmm.
You got to make that decision yourself, and it's
Right.
going to be all personal between you and your physician. And so we don't have an answer.
Yeah. Mary says, I really blew up after menopause. And that is when people may not have really felt like they had severe lipedema symptoms prior to menopause, but after menopause, wow, it's really obvious now. And that might have been your trigger period. In this one article that we did put the link in there, lipedema and the potential role of estrogen in excessive adipose tissue accumulation. This was in 2021. They're saying that it might be an issue of the receptor cells, the estrogen receptor cells, and there are alpha and beta receptor cells. And if they are dysregulated, then the mechanism for accumulating fat or not accumulating fat is off. And so it may not be a lack of or too much estrogen, but the receptor cells are dysregulated. So it's just so complicated. And we know we say to experiment with things, but sometimes an experiment can be a real disaster. I think about what Siobhan did a self-experimentation while she was eating a particular way. And she decided, well, I'm going to see what happens. I think it was like a really high carb or something like that. And she wanted to see what they did.
Yeah, I think she went almost total vegetarian
yeah. And I think it was only like a couple weeks or something like that. And it was a disaster. And it totally dysregulated her metabolism that she still is kind of having repercussions from. So I really hate to say to people, well, just try it and see if HRT works for you or if it doesn't, because you could end up, worse than you are after doing an experiment like that. So it really takes a lot of discussion with your endocrinologist, your expert on hormones.
Yeah. And I personally, they put me on estradiol because I couldn't sleep at night. And it was like night sweats. Every 20 minutes I was having to strip. It was just a mess.
Yes.
And this was before I knew I had lipedema. And they put me on that. And the next thing you know, my whole body was aching. I just ached all over and my legs ached. I just thought, oh, this is, it isn't good for me. So I went off it. Yeah. And then, so I went to a functional medical place and they got me, a compounded thing. And as I started using it, the same thing happened. Oh. And I'm just like, Okay, so I was on the combi patch to start, and then they compounded stuff for me, and I just said no more. And I found my best my best thing for me was changing my way of eating.
Ah,
And
interesting.
right.
Interesting.
And
Yes.
so
Yes.
that's when I went carnivore.
Yes. Very interesting. Very interesting. I wanted to, one person wanted to know the HCG, the doctor who did that was
Mm.
Dr. Paula Stewart, Stewart. She did not publish it. I got this information from her. As far as I know, she didn't publish it. I talked with her and she verbally told me this information. I guess I should Google it and see if Dr. Paula Stewart, lipedema HCG study, and see if there's anything out there. But I wanted to talk to you about some of the things that was in this article, Samantha Colony out of Harvard Medical School, and her things about pregnancy and lipedema. And one thing she was talking about, I mean, there is some speculation that lipedema is actually a connective tissue disorder, right?
Right.
And during probably the late stage of pregnancy, we get, there is a hormone called relaxin that is emitted to, just like it says, it wants to relax your connective tissue so that everything can open up so you can get that big fetus to go through a pretty small area. And so it basically lets your pelvis and all those ligaments relax and open up. And so you can have a little bit easier time with delivery. And so she said, why don't we look to see if relaxin is higher levels in women with lipedema, because it's a connective tissue thing and we might have that comorbidity. She also was looking at the hormone prolactin, and prolactin is the one that lets you start producing milk.
Right.
And it also, apparently it does something to keep you or make it less likely you get pregnant again during that period when you're still nursing.
Oh, yeah.
And so she said that she had a couple of patients that, well, one that was, I think she had some kind of pituitary tumor or something like that, and it caused her to have super high levels of prolactin. And that was when her lipedema symptoms seemed to take off. And another patient, she said that, again, like other people are reporting, she felt the best when she was pregnant, not so much after. And maybe that when the prolactin rises after you give birth, then that was a time of exacerbation. And so she said it would be interesting to test the levels of all those kind of pregnancy associated hormones besides estrogen and progesterone.
Right.
We should be looking at what those hormone levels are in women with lipedema. She said that prolactin, actually, things like high stress, trauma can cause your prolactin levels to increase. Oh, that's interesting. And so, and we had talked about, there is this theory that periods of heightened stress might also be a trigger for lipedema. And if you're getting these higher levels of prolactin during that stress time, there's so many things. And they said it's not only just one hormone, it's the interaction of various different things. Something is up, something's down, and then you have some stress, and then this other thing happens. And then I think for some women, it ends up being this perfect storm, right?
Right. I think so. And now it's genetically, it's also linked to our genetics. So it's not like just because you're going to go through this, you're going to develop lipedema. It's like lipedema is waiting there for some genetic expression toggle to go click. It seems like that. And because we do know that people say, well, I'm the only one in my family that has it. But we really don't know if it comes down on the father's side or the mother's side.
Right. And we don't know if it's one of those genes that may not actually produce anything unless the environment is right.
Right, right. And so, when I look at my girls, I have one who's built like me, and I have one who's built like my mother-in-law. And I'm not built like my mom. I was built like my father's aunt. My father was an only child,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I don't look like my grandma. I look like my aunt, right?
Yes, on your father's side.
On the father's side, we have this one Aunt Dolly, and we're shaped very much the same. But my daughter, one looks like me, and one looks like grandma on my husband's side. So who knows, right? Why it triggers the way we don't know any of this. I mean, it's just
Right.
kind of everything is still so new.
Yes.
I was going to say, can we talk a little bit about nutrition?
Sure. We already did allude to it a little bit. And I love to talk
Right.
about that. Sure.
Yeah. So Jane just wants to know, everybody's like, what's the best diet? What's the best diet? And this is really a difficult situation, but we do know certain things about how we get best results. Many of us, that a lot of anecdotal, and now we're starting to find more and more research about it. So Leslyn, can you talk? She says, so is the carnivore diet the best for lipedema?
So I think that there is a lot of clinical and anecdotal evidence that would lead me to believe that the fewer plants and the more animal sourced foods that you eat probably going to be better for you in general. But what is the balance between the protein and the fat, I think is going to be very individual. Some people do high fat carnivore and they have dairy products, and other people will do more high protein carnivore and not have dairy, for instance. That's just two variations. So I think whatever you choose, I think that for lipedema and lymphedema, the fewer carbs and the fewer plants, probably the better. But as far as how much fat to have, I mean, for some people, eating a lot of fat is not good. That for their individual situation, it can actually make them feel very ill. Another issue that we're talking about is people who have a central lymphatic dysfunction. And that is the ability of your lymphatics to take fluid and nutrients, mostly fat, from your intestines and deliver it where it needs to go. And if it's not functioning well, you don't actually want to eat a lot of fat. So in general, I would say keto, hardly any plants in general, but now you have to find, what's going to be the best for you.
Right. And be aware that there are some certain foods that you might recognize, especially if you really watch and see what you're eating and record it. You might realize certain foods cause you issues. Yeah. My biggest issue is with grain. I mean, yes. if I eat grains at all, it doesn't matter if it's rice or if it's wheat, doesn't matter, barley, doesn't matter, oats, doesn't matter what kind of grains. If I eat grains, right. I'm miserable. It's almost unbearable. I find that I almost lose my mobility completely. I can barely walk. Yeah. But when I get the grains out, a couple of days after I get the grains out of my system, I'm fine again. Can I handle dairy? I probably shouldn't do as much dairy as I do because sometimes I feel a little swollen. Mm-hmm. But it isn't something that will go, oh my gosh, dairy hurts me, right?
Yeah. Not as obvious with that one.
Not as obvious. But grains, yes. Eggs, I can eat all day and tomorrow and the next day.
And I think it is those obvious ones are easier for us to identify and get rid of. The other ones that maybe it's cumulative over time, or it's a delay of many hours or even a day before we see the repercussion, it's harder for us to identify and easier for us, especially if we really like it, to rationalize, oh, it probably wasn't that.
I've heard people say, oh, I can't eat tomatoes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Tomato sauce gets them every single time because
Yeah.
it's obvious to them. Yeah,
Yes.
I had some tomato sauce last night and I'm paying for it today. I'm like,
Yeah.
See, and I'm the one who says, yeah, I had that slice of pizza and I'm paying for it today. Right? Not because, and it's not from the scales point of view. It's from looking straight down at my left ankle.
Yeah.
And going, oh my gosh.
That's your barometer.
That's my barometer, right? And so, so as you do this, as you go through and you look at it, now this one was that question was from Jane, because she's reading the Lipedema Lymphedema nutrition guide. Mm-hmm. But yet that isn't the guide of that, like the Bible, right? Because
it is one opinion.
Right.
And it's a very traditional opinion. It promotes a primarily plant-based diet, a high carbohydrate diet. They are opposed to grains, but they do want to be more plant-based, which for a lot of people, plants might actually be quite inflammatory, particularly, some types of plants. So I don't agree with that book for most all of it. I mean, at one point they say that if you do a plant-based diet, we suggest you have 80% of your calories come from carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are inflammatory to the lymphatic system. I don't know how they could ever recommend that. And it's guaranteed to give you type 2 diabetes. And they said if you insist on having animal products, that 60% of your calories should come from carbohydrates. It's still way too high. So I think that it is best. The number one thing that's best for the lymphatics is to limit your carbohydrates.
Yeah, we've had several people, like Sharon here says she used that book at first and she threw herself into increased POTS,
Oh,
yes. And hypovolemia.
Yes.
Yeah. And yet some people swear by being vegan or vegetarian. I have a kid who was vegan about 8 years. She's still in her 30s. So yeah, 8 years. And I myself was in a vegan lifestyle for a good 2.5 years. And I felt worse in that time of my life than I ever had. I felt better on standard American diet than I did as a vegan.
That's basically an omnivore. I mean, as sad diet is an omnivore, although it's highly processed, it's
right. But I felt better then. And then when I gave up the grains, because that's what I did first, I gave up grains completely and sugar. And it was like, oh my gosh, 3 weeks and I didn't have any pain. And by the time I found out I had lipedema, I forgot that my legs hurt.
Yeah.
Because I was 2 years into the project before.
Right.
It was like, oh my gosh, I'm not eating grains again. Well, I still do once in a while, and I pay for it. Right?
No, that's why how and this is how one way we figure things out is that you cut something out. You're going, oh, I think I'm better, but I'm not sure. And then you have it again, and whammo! I mean, and then it's sometimes when you cheat, so-called cheat, is when you really figure it out.
Yeah. And so even though I'd say I'm carnivore, I'm not like 100% carnivore. But I would have to say most days I'm mostly carnivore. I mean, well, for example, like today I had nuts and a keto treat. Okay. I had a keto treat and some nuts along with my eggs and beef, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did today.
Yeah.
But I know what I can have a little bit of here and there.
Right.
Not have problems. But I find that when I tried going I tried adding a vegetable to every meal for about a week, and pretty soon I just didn't want to eat anymore. I was so miserable.
Oh, yeah.
But it was just
That's when
because
you learn something. That's when
I
you
know
learn
I'm
something.
just like,
Yes.
and even people who thought I should be eating more vegetables, they looked at me and said, "Why are you doing this?" Right?
Yeah.
So it because they know how I act, they know how I respond to things, and they watch me going, being like, bleh, being
Yeah.
droopy and puffy, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Why, Gil, why are you doing that? Eat the way you know how to eat." So
Mhm.
that's and Kathy wants to know about fruits, and I can tell you, I eat a blueberry. I wouldn't say a blueberry, but I eat a handful of blueberries on occasion, and I eat a few strawberries, not very many,
Mhm.
and that's about it out of the fruit.
Mhm.
But and then pickles. Pickles are my favorite vegetable. Little dill pickles are my
Mhm.
favorite
Mhm.
vegetable.
Uh,
And Leslyn doesn't like pickles.
I know, and I don't think that they're bad to eat. And every once in a while, I look at it, it looks so good, it smells so good. Give me that. Nope, still don't like it.
I keep telling my daughter, I just really want to like pot roast. And she looks at me, she goes, "Why?" I said, "Because it looks so good." She goes, "But
Yeah,
you don't like pot roast." I don't like pot roast.
yeah.
And she's like,
It kind of has that homey smell, it's like this is family. I smelled that pot roast. I'm thinking, oh, I'm here with family, and everybody loves me.
I
And
know.
then you taste it and you go, oh, okay, not so
I
much.
put it on my plate and I'm like, okay, a couple okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
Where's my steak, or where's my egg? Me and my eggs, right? So it's really interesting how our bodies will tell us what it wants
Yeah.
and listen to it. So
I was just talking to a woman today with lipedema and lymphedema, and we were asking her, well, do you have any cravings? Yeah, I really crave meat. I go, how interesting. Um, because I think we humans, and I think any animal will keep on eating until they get the nutrients that they need, and you will
I
crave what you need. For instance, I think one reason why people crave chocolate is that they might be copper or magnesium deficient. And so
maybe.
if you can get unsweetened chocolate, it may be something that you need. That's why you crave that particular thing. Now, definitely the sugar is, it's like cocaine, and it does that pathway in your brain um, that's not a healthy craving. That is actually a drug addiction. But I think that we do pursue the nutrients we need, and you know what? Meat has them all.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you say that. I remember Nobuhle.
Yes.
Of course, we remember Nobuhle, right? In all her voluptuousness.
Uh-huh.
And she said that she rarely ate fish. She just didn't care for it. And one day she was in the store and she saw the salmon, and
Uh-huh.
she bought like 2 pounds of salmon. And she went home and she grilled that thing up in her black skillet and ate the whole thing.
Yeah. She needed it.
She
There was
needed
something in there she needed. Yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I have not, since my middle child was born, I haven't been able to eat fish. I was raised with fish. I mean, I was, and recently, in January, in fact, I had my first piece of salmon in years. And I would keep, to actually eat the whole thing, I keep trying to, like, oh, I'll have a bite of your salmon. I'm like, oh. And yet I ate that salmon. It was delicious. And we've been having salmon maybe every other week now. And I'm making it
Oh, great.
with no problem.
Great.
And I'm eating it. And I'm
Yeah.
going, what just happened? My body wants it.
Yeah, yeah. And so you think about this when you first switch a child over to solid foods. Maybe they were breastfeeding and now they're going to have solid foods. And we've all seen a baby push stuff out of their mouth, right? I don't want that. And let me tell you, it's usually vegetables. And I do think that humans instinctually, babies instinctually, they haven't learned that, you know, some food is not good for you or is good for you. It's self-preservation. You know, I don't want to have toxic stuff go into me. And I think that most vegetables have anti-nutrients and chemicals and toxins in them that aren't good for you. And that reaction, when you see a baby spitting those green beans out, stop eating the green beans yourself.
Oh, you're funny. Yeah. Julian's first, I say Julian like everybody knows who Julian is. I used to be his nanny. And his very first solid food was a mashed avocado. And he loved it. And it's really interesting because as mommy said, you know, we just put a tiny little bit of breast milk in the avocado and made it smooth. And
yeah.
he loved it. He loved it. He's like, hey, I'll take that. And so that's, he didn't get pablum or any of that other stuff. His very favorite thing to eat was avocado. So I would like stir it up and hand it to him in the shell with his little spoon. And he would eat it down as soon as he could handle that spoon, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see he wanted that. He needed that. And it's probably, you know, he needed whatever was in that avocado made him happy.
Yeah.
You know, so anyway, listen, this has been really cool. We've gotten so many people who've commented. And Peggy says, I cannot eat lettuce. Peggy, high five. I am with you.
Leaves, not so much. Yeah.
Give me the top of the salad, not the bottom part.
Right.
Anyway, so, you know, some people are eating veggies, they're eating fruits, they're eating whatever. Marcia says she's got a sugar addiction. We have all of these different food reactions, you know, reactions to food, and addiction is part of it, especially with sugars and grains and things like that. They really do. Sometimes we have to fight that. But we're going to get going. Leslyn, we've been on this call for over 45 minutes, which is not unusual for you and me.
I know.
We can keep going. And I just want everybody who's here tonight to, you know, give Leslyn some love. Come on, you can do it. We've only got 7. And I know that we've had as many as 45 people on the call tonight. So just throw some love at her. I want to see the number goes up. There you go. I see it right across the top of my screen. Yay!
Yeah, thank you for those of you that contributing to the conversation and all of your comments. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you have to say. Remember, these things, this is all saved, right, Gail? All those comments will be there later.
Oh yeah. This is all saved.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not now. They don't all show up on because we go to 8 different
Facebook things.
Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. We go to 8 different places, and so that's why you can't see everybody's comments. Yeah. But if you ever have any questions, you see Leslyn's email address down at the bottom, yes. Leslyn@lipedemaproject.org. Please send her a message. Or send it to me if you need to. I'm Gail at lipedema-simplified.org. But you guys already know that. And what else I wanted to ask Leslyn. This is my question, and she knows it's coming. If you had one message that you would love echoed around the world, what would it be, Leslyn?
Well, gosh, to me, it always goes back down to the lymphatics, and feed your lymphatics. Be kind to your lymphatics, support your lymphatics, because they're involved in many more parts of your health in your life than you ever suspected. And what's the best thing you can do for your lymphatics? Cut the carbs.
And eat your fat. and with that, I just want everybody to know that there's always hope. You're not out there alone. We're here with you. And as you can see from the comments, everybody's here. We're all in the same boat. So please make sure you reach out to us. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful night. Or if you're someplace where it's morning, I hope you have a wonderful day. Talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.